Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've been kind of out of commission for a little bit, but thought I'd do a quick little review of this Absolute Power series. Dan Mora on art, Mark Wade on story. I haven't seen whether there's a lot of buzz about this. I left Twitter a while ago now. I don't. People still post. I pinned or the last. I don't think I pinned it. I think the last tweet I have is just of a guy just tipping his hat. And that's goodbye for Twitter. But anyway, things happen. But I went on there to kind of look at Absolute Power to just quickly see, what the reviews were. Is it getting kind of beat up or not? And simultaneously, what's going on is they're trying to get Joe Biden, the current U.S. president, to drop out of the race. And so the first tweet that comes up, or the first thing, has nothing to do with comics or Absolute Power. But they're comparing. This person's got a thread that is comparing the calls for Joe Biden to drop out and people trying to convince him of dropping out to rape culture of people trying to convince women to be raped. And at that point, I closed Twitter. I'm like, yep, I don't miss this at all. Like there is nothing about any of this shit that I miss. And by the way, for all you people out there who hold up your nose a little bit at Twitter because you have the far greater, far more powerful Reddit. Yeah, your site sucks too. I get the emails for topics you may be interested in, and at some point I must have looked up something on Harry Potter. I don't know what or why, or there's also a good possibility my daughter did on my device. And now I get these emails all the time, and it's like people debating how transphobic, Rowling is Harry Potter anti-gay, and it's just, it's the most aggravating shit ever. I'm reminded of some of my biggest critics who are over on Reddit, and they're the ones who are like, this channel is a hardcore CG anti-comic book channel. It's like, all right, that's your takeaway. Sounds good, my friend. Anyway, Absolute Power. So, again, not knowing what people are thinking about it, saying about it. So this may be a take that's wildly off for everyone else. Read the first issue, and it's more or less fine. I think it suffers from three major things, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the art is pretty. I think Dan Mora is a great artist. Clearly on the way to becoming like the big new artist for the next decade. I believe. I think. Very, very quick, good renderings, just looks really solid. When he eventually kind of cashes in that DC contract and wanders over to Marvel, Marvel's just going to have the biggest direction for years with that acquisition. But anyway, it looks really pretty. The story also feels like there's, I guess, a decent amount of story. Some of these event issues feel like they kind of zip through really, really quickly. This one feels like there's at least a couple different things going on in there. So doesn't feel like it's too rushed. I like the framing. The first thing, we see is Superman basically losing his powers. And then we kind of flash back to earlier, a few hours earlier, and we see how it led up to that. And so there's some interesting aspects to it. And it's as a storyline goes, it's fine. It's an event, clearly. It doesn't think too seriously about itself. Some events, especially at Marvel lately, and to be honest, some of the ones at DC as well. Death Metal, for example, started out kind of as a relatively lighthearted, hey, here's a bunch of Batman multiverse dark stuff. And then it started to get very, meta. Just suddenly it wanted to get smarter than I think it was. Final Crisis, Morrison's going to do that anyway, but, started out as a really good event. By the end of it, you're like, what the fuck's going on here? I mean, you can understand what's going on. It felt like it got too clever for its own good. Not the comics have to be stupid. Just, the event should feel important because it's important, not because, the writer's kind of hammering you over your head, making you think it's important. But anyway, so all in all, it's fine. As if you read it, it's okay. Heroes are in some jeopardy, villains are doing their thing, and that's fine. It's nice to feel like there's a villain threat with kind of known people or real people. This has been another problem with events where the villains are either people you've never heard of before or care of. I mean, look, even that Donny Cates King in Black where you had Null going on, it's the Perpetua stuff that went on in DC. Like you bring in these characters and they're like, these characters are really serious and important and big, and it's like, I mean, are they though? It's this one feels like, all right, we know who some of these characters are. They're doing something threatening and they're really going to fuck up the heroes' lives. And that's good. So all in all, structurally fine. But I think it does suffer from three major problems. And by the way, I haven't really got into spoilers, but probably we're headed there now. So if you're listening along and you haven't read it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, now's probably the jumping off point if you haven't already. But three, by the way, I'd be curious of the people who clicked on this video and it's like review of, Absolute Power. And then you get angry because it spoils it. Like, what the hell do you think is going to happen on the thumbnail that you clicked? But anyway, I've said this before. People are like, yeah, but sometimes your videos autoplay after other videos. Like, yeah, but right at the beginning. And then I went into this weird rambling thing about Reddit. Like, you had plenty of opportunity to click away. All right, whatever. The three major problems are this. Number one, because there's been so many events, because the heroes have been in such catastrophic situations in the past, I've noticed this in a few different stories. Jason Aaron has done it. Mark Waid is now doing it, where it's like the writer is trying to really hammer home that no, it's serious this time. And in this one, Mark Waid does it with we've taken away your powers and you're not getting them back. And I've sealed off the multiverse and I've sealed off the other dimensions. And it's like, I've closed every loophole. Readers, it starts feeling like Amanda Waller, who's saying all this stuff, is not talking to the heroes, but rather talking to the readers. And it comes across like, yeah, the stakes are high because we're telling you the stakes are high. That, it's everything is really hopeless. It's really hopeless. And, heroes are really fucked now. And that takes away from a little bit of the threat. The situation is threatening. So having this speech that goes on toward the last third of the book where it's like, I've thought of everything and you're screwed now. It just to me as a reading it's like, okay, so the event is going to put everything back in the box. So therefore really it's like it's no longer a comic to just read and be entertained by. It's more of a puzzle about how they got to get out of this situation. And that's kind of, I mean, this isn't the biggest criticism in the world, but when you have multiple events a year, you kind of need to land it's a threat on its own and not tell the reader, yeah, this is a big deal. Because, they're aware it's a big deal. It's the summer event and they paid a lot of money for it and everything else. So it just takes away from, the story. The second problem, which is closely related to the first, is we started to see the links for the Absolute line, this new line that has Scott Snyder and Jason Aaron and Al Ewing's in there and Kelly Thompson's in there, and we're going to get Nick Dragotta doing Batman, and you get that because it's setting up a bunch of stories in the future. And this is a problem that both comic companies have had. It's like, here's a big event, and it's a really big event. And before the event really gets going, we're going to start teasing the next big thing, the next big event. And so it takes away from it being a story on its own to be remembered, and it feels more like a vehicle to get to the next thing that we're going to sell you. And I think that as well, it just takes away from the stakes of this. You're not thinking about, boy, this is a super big comic and how are they going to get out of this one? Instead, you're thinking about, I wonder how this is going to set up the next thing that they're going to do, which will set up the next thing that they're going to do. And that's kind of the flaw here in a lot of this stuff, is that comics are best when they feel like you're on board for a great story and not that you're on board for a marketing campaign. And that's how this one kind of comes across. The last criticism is one that is definitely a geeky continuity type criticism, and it's this. If you've been reading comics for a long time, and Mark Waid has, and this is one of those cases where, Waid is a good comic writer. I think he's created a lot of stories that are really solid. And the challenge that I think Waid has is that he gets in his own way. and there's a case where there's a little interview with Mark Waid. It's like a 2-page, DC promotional fluff interview. And in it, there's a statement of, Wade's like, I've read every DC comic ever. And it doesn't come across like, hey, I've got a lot of knowledge, so I'm putting something really good together for you. It comes across like, I'm a douche. That's how it comes across. And, and so with that in mind, you read this comic, and Amanda Waller, who's been in the DC universe forever, like we're talking decades now as a character, was a very nuanced, a lot of complexity, a lot of layers character in what she did for the Suicide Squad, and she's not a bwahaha type villain. She was cold and ruthless, but there was a reason for it. And I think that when you read this, Amanda Waller has now become if you think about it for 2 seconds, illogical villain. She's like, the heroes start running around and they don't have anybody on top, they don't have anybody controlling them. So, that's why I've got a bunch of Amazo robots that have never, ever got amok and caused trouble in the universe before. And I'm using Brainiac, which is also is complete, that's completely fine. I hate superheroes and non-humans, but I'm willing to, have a bunch of AI robots and aliens, and that's part of my plan. And we're going to really kind of mercilessly screw up the heroes. It's like a lot of the complexity of Amanda Waller has been stripped away. And now she's just a kind of a overbearing government villain who's figured out a trick to cause trouble for the heroes. And now she's going to screw them for a little bit, and then she'll get defeated, and on it goes. And I think that it's poor use of a character, because I think it minimizes a lot of interesting depth and history for them. But more than that, it's that line of, I've read every DC comic, says Mark Waid. Well, if you've read every DC comic, then you have to be aware at how poorly you're writing this character and how reductive you're writing this character. If you read every comic, then, why'd you turn her into a cliche? And I think that's, and to some extent, by the way, Green Arrow as well. He shows up in this comic, he turns on the heroes. And it's like, again, things are being written very one-dimensional, which tends to be what a lot of events do. You don't get the kind of detail that you get in the long run with the character. But in this instance, there's a lot that seems to be taken away from the lore of DC rather than added. Now, hopefully the, ends justify the means. You get a big comic. I do like the story idea. The superheroes don't have their powers, so how are they going to be heroic and save the day anyway? And the true metal of the person inside, Superman is more than his powers. That's kind of the story we're getting. We did get that story like 2 to 3 years ago already, but that's fine. We'll get it again. And, Philip Kennedy Johnson and his kind of epic did a really good job of exploring that exact topic. But okay, I guess we'll do it again. There's stuff in here and it'll be fine. I just, all things considered, this is not a bad event. It's not a bad first issue. It just feels a little bit like a shame. And maybe I also, to be fair, had higher expectations for Waid, because he does write big, good epic events. Kingdom Come was a pretty powerful story, has withstood the test of time. So if he's coming on to do an event, before he springs into being the new writer for Justice League, then, feels like there should be a little bit more depth here. But, it does feel in many cases like a Marvel event in terms of structure and stakes and, hey, bad things are going to happen. How are they going to get out of this one? Issue number 2 will make things a little bit worse, and then 3 will start to show a rally. I mean, it's a very predictable formula at this point. You just kind of hope for more. But anyway, did you read the issue? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.